we have James, and next up we have James Sir. Now, I've got lots to say about James. I personally know him, and I would actually say that he taught me everything that I know about design. He is the man. Now, James is a digital design manager at SAP Litmus. He is not only fantastic at what he does, he has also taught at Swinburne University Faculty of Design. I won't say anything more. I'll just hand you over to James. Here we go.
Thanks, Kath. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. Welcome to the session. Hopefully, you can hear me loud and clear. My name is James, and in case you're wondering about my weird accent and my background, I was born and raised in Singapore and spent the last 12 years here in Melbourne. And I consider myself as a Melburnian because I love the brunches and cafes, especially the coffees. And if there's one thing you need to get out of this session today, it is I'm totally a coffee addict. So hopefully I've made you laugh and got you ready for this presentation. So let's get started. Throughout my 15 years of experience, I've worked across a wide range of areas. And this includes advertising, multimedia, UX, photography, videography, teaching, learning and development. And I love my job as a creative professional. Currently, I'm a digital designer in the learning and technology sector. I look after a team of awesome digital designers whom I work closely with. We talk about design and UX all the time. As part of my role, I run regular design reviews with them and provide feedback on their work.
Did he just go to the poll?
Sorry.
Everything okay, James?
Everything okay, James?
Yep. Can you see my screen?
Oh, we can just see you.
No, we can only see you.
Okay, sorry.
It's all good. Drop down to share screen.
Okay, it's poll time. So in this poll, I'm curious to know, in your current role, do you need to critique or give feedback to somebody's work? So just to clarify, it doesn't need to be a manager role, critiquing or giving feedback. It can be anybody giving feedback to another colleague. So I'll give you a few minutes.
Oh, it's controversial here, James. So the poll is, in your current role, do you need to critique or give feedback to someone's work? Oh, we're kind of getting even Stevens here. So it's looking like the answer is sometimes, James. That's the leading answer. So we have sometimes at 59%, always at 37%, and never just at 4%. James can't hear me.
Oh, James didn't hear you. That's got to be open.
Okay, James, so we've got 58% sometimes, 38% always, and 4% never.
Oh, good. Good. So by the looks of the result, it seems like there's a higher percentage amongst you that do give feedback in your role. So in this case, I hope that this presentation will benefit you. All right, so in this session, I'll be walking through my design critique process. What are the positives? What are the negatives? And how to improve them. There are some of the design best practices in e-learning that I look out for. All right, so here are some of them. Firstly, the overall look and feel. How does the course look as a whole? What's the mood or the vibe that it gives off? Does it look professional? Does it look playful? Does it appeal to my learners? Alignment and spacing. Color. Does the color work well together? Does the color contrast meet accessibility requirements? Typography. Typography is important in any design, especially in learning design. It's Is the font easy to read? Is it legible in smaller sizes? Do we pick serif or sans serif fonts? The style of graphics. Is the graphic appropriate for my learners? Do I choose illustrations over photographs? Or do I use icons? Visual hierarchy. What's the sequence you want your learners to read your content? Is it fit for purpose? Does the design meet the brief? Does it work with our target audiences? Accessibility and usability. So accessibility is one of the important factors we consider in our designs. We want our products to be accessible and inclusive as much as we can. And to any of our users, regardless of the ability and environment. Usability. Does the UI make sense to you? Will anyone have issues working through the content? Do you put yourself in the shoes of the learners? Interaction. Does it work for your content? Does the interaction, is the interaction accessible? All right, finally, we've got the functionality check. Are there any glitches in your work? Are there any glitches in your course? Are you able to get from the start to the end without any problems? All right, so in a few moments, we'll look at a few submissions from the show. And if you're not familiar, it's a learning design competition that ran for the last couple of months leading up to this conference. So the organizers came up with the briefs. Participants of all skill levels can submit their designs and they are voted by the industry. So there are many submissions and we approached a few participants and asked for the permissions for me to review their work. So to these participants, to those participants that are going to see their work, I just want to say a huge thank you for allowing me to show your work and also critique them. It's really a privilege and I really appreciate that. All right, so let's start with the design brief. Julia is an L&D manager at Liberty City. She's looking for a solution that is made for the general public to learn about COVID-19. The solution is called a guide to fighting COVID-19. It needs to be appropriate for all ages and easy to update. 3 words that she gave: vibrant, minimal, and conversational. So assuming that we are currently working in an agency and we're going to pitch our mock-ups to Julia, all right? My team members have sent their designs to me in advance, whether it's through email, Dropbox, OneDrive. We're going to review their designs, okay? First design is submitted by Emily. It's a mobile-friendly design, all right? It can be used on any device at ease, all right? So just zooming into the design. So Emily is one of my team member and she sent this mock-up over for my review. What is my critique process? So my first impression is the general look and feel. It looks friendly. The blue color has this calming effect. It's a design about COVID-19. And obviously the pandemic has been stressful for many of us, but the design does not need to be. I think Emily has used visual design to set the mood and it's pleasant to look at. Emily has created a logo type for Liberty City. She has also used the logo type across the screen. So there's good brand continuity over there. It's a simple typeface that's clear and legible. I'll talk a little bit about accessibility later because some of the text may not be accessible. She has chosen to use illustrations and it's a nice art style. Sometimes illustrations as opposed to photography are more relatable to a wider group of audience and creates better connection because it's more generic. The character is wearing a mask and proper PPE, so it's relevant to the topic. And there's also textures and patterns in the background. What I'll suggest is to remove the shadows and clean up the thin black color line around the graphic. And even the shadows of the text can be removed as well. So removing them, I think, will make them cleaner. Otherwise, the button stands out and the label is simple and clear. And this part looks like it's a navigation. The navigation is consistent across the screens. And there's labels above the icons as well, noting what the buttons actually represent. So it's clear and it's good for accessibility. Over on the other side, you can see there's also a clear selected state. The colors are darkened to show that it's the current state. The current updates widget shows the number, the data of the number of cases when it's being last updated. And I can see that it's such a useful tool. However, some of the color contrast between the text and the background may not or do not meet accessibility guidelines. So there are several tools that we used to check for color contrast. And the one I'm showing right now to the right of the screen is a desktop app. It's called Color Contrast Analyzer, which is the one that we use in our workplace as well. So in this case, we are checking the contrast of the white color text against the pale turquoise background. So this color. We're going to use an eyedropper tool from the foreground and pick the color from the text, which is the 1-800 number. Then we use an eyedropper tool from the background color and we pick from the pale turquoise background. And as you can see, that it has failed the minimum AA standard in both regular text and large text. So in this case, we can either change the color of the text or the color of the background. All right, we're going to darken the color of the text. The other thing that I'll change is probably to darken the color of the text on the right-hand side of the widget. I think for accessibility reasons, it needs to be darker and the size can probably be improved as well. So for accessibility reasons, the text size should be allowed, all right, for the users to enlarge according to their preference, up to 200% or to 200% according through their browser or app settings. All right, so we have changed the color of text from white to steel blue. All right, so in this case, you can see that on the left, the minimum standard has failed both regular and large text. And then on the right hand side, you've got text that passes on both levels. The contrast ratio is 1.7 and this contrast ratio is 7.1. So Emily has used an accordion here to break down the information, and I think it works really well. She has thought of diversity using characters with different cultural backgrounds and ages. In terms of readability, I think the font works well too. If I'm really picky, I also like some of the tracking of this text to be wider, so that the spacing between the characters, because some of these texts some of them are too close, and because they are in all caps, they sometimes can be harder to read. I like how these ticks are being used here. So I assume that this tick is to represent that certain part of the accordion or information has been tapped on. So the lighter tick seems to say that it represents content that hasn't been interacted before. The issue here is that the contrast is not obvious enough. So in this session, not only I want to walk through my critique process, I also want to show you the design best practices in e-learning being implemented. So by actually taking in the feedback that I've just given. So in this way, you can see the before and after. But in a day-to-day work, I don't have the time to implement the feedback myself. I'll document this feedback and hand over to the designers to take in the changes. So this is the before design. And this is the after design, before and after. So as you can see, I've darkened the background so that the light color text pops. I've removed the shadows of the graphic here and the shadows of the text as well, and also the black color line on the graphic. And I've used a white color stroke. It makes the graphic just a little bit cleaner. And I kind of like the padding over here as well because of the white color stroke. So it looks a little bit more polished. I've changed the button to green as it stands out more against the blue. The color of the text in the widget is clearer and more accessible. The text on the side is bigger and darker. So sometimes from an aesthetic point of view, we may not like the changes given that we have the design within the constraint of accessibility guidelines, but it's a guideline that we have to follow. We design as best as we can within the guidelines. In the word or the symptoms here, we've also opened up the tracking so that it's easier to read. Adding ticks in a green circle also make them more obvious. Right, green color for consistency, and green is a great color to use for this instance. It's a positive color and it usually represents completed or correct. So there you go. Just using basic design principles, just slight little tweaks to the design can help us to achieve a better outcome. So overall, I'm really happy with the design, and I think Emily has done a great job in this mockup. I think she has considered user experience and its consistency and is consistent throughout. It's well thought out, it's vibrant and minimalistic. So I think she has definitely met the brief. So well done, Emily. All right, the next design that we're reviewing is from Emily Dole. We can see that this design is designed for a desktop format. So Emily, I like your use of colors. I like the color palette, and I think the color works quite well together. I think we've got the heading that stands out over here. We've got strong contrast against the white color background. And over on the left, there's a graphic with speech bubbles showing click the paper icon to view more information about COVID-19 from CDC. Okay, and then you have also chosen to use an organic shaped blobs as containers to contain these facts. And I quite like your illustrations because they're flat, good choice of colors, and they're clean. Then the next button to move forward is on the left side, hand side of the screen. So there are a number of things happening on this page and they are looking quite busy. But the brief says minimalistic. So there is an order to how we read. For most Western cultures, we read from the left to the right. The image on the left shows the heat maps of the eye tracking studies conducted by NN Group. The red color shows the areas where users look the most, and followed by the yellow and then blue, which looks like an F shape or E shape pattern. So this is my reading pattern for this screen. As we've got a big heading, my eyes goes directly there. After that, my eyes will scan back and forth to the left-hand side of the screen. All right, I'll scan to the left-hand side of the screen, and I'll wander between the graphic, between with the speech bubbles and the fact one. And this is not ideal because it's breaking the flow of our content. Learner then continues to read through the facts. They have come back to the left to continue to the next screen. So when this happens, it adds cognitive load, and it does not help our learners work through the content efficiently. So sometimes it can be frustrating to our learners when they can't find how to progress further on a page. And this is a usability issue. So we want to establish a visual hierarchy. And we start by grouping the key information in order of importance and reading order. First, we have the heading, then the facts, then the graphic with the speech bubble. And then lastly, we want the learners to click on the next button to move on. So I actually remove number 3. That can go to another screen instead. Okay, so I position the heading and the facts in the center. So on this screen, we're going to focus on typography. The facts are looking very cluttered. It's quite hard for someone to read the content because they're too close and the text sizes are too small. The colors of the text are also not accessible. The bullet points over here, they need to be indented and aligned. The font sizes here are smaller and the font size needs to be consistent. So the fact is that in a mockup, we don't always need to place actual content. So at times I'll trim down and make them more presentable. And sometimes we use dummy text as placeholders. We can also use an activity type such as a select and review or a flip card to break the content down. And if I'm picky, I think that fact 1 doesn't flow quite well to fact 2 because of the proximity between them, right? So in this case, it probably isn't a need to read the facts in sequence, but let's just say it is, there may be an issue, okay? So the rule is not to use too many fonts. And we're gonna stick to using Roboto. I'm gonna use Roboto font as a heading and remove the white color. Sorry. Okay, so I've removed the positions so that the proximity between the facts are similar and follow a sequence. They are less cluttered and much more open. The number of text can also be reduced. The darker text, the color is darker now that it's clearer and more accessible. The facts themselves is what I want our learners to focus on. So I've kind of made them bigger. Okay, so before, and I've kind of made them bigger. And I also want to have them focus on this, so I don't make them bigger than the fact number themselves. I've used 2 Google fonts. Okay, one is Roboto as a heading and Nunito as the body font. Okay, these are modern and easy to read. They are legible even at small sizes. They are both serif. They're both sans serif fonts. And I'll talk more about the difference between serif and sans serif font later. As you can see, I've also used dummy text over here, as well as here, as placeholders. It's a good alternative when you're working on a mockup, when a content is not ready yet. So in some cases, we also want our clients to focus on the visuals instead of being distracted by the content. And when you are designing a template, it can be quicker to use a placeholder text as well. And as this is a flip card activity, when it clicked on, it reviews more content. Here's the difference between serif and sans serif font. A serif is a decorative stroke that finish off at the end of a letter. A serif font typically looks more classic, and you usually see them on newspapers, books, and magazines. The French word sans means without, and sans serif simply means without serif. A sans serif font looks simpler and more modern. It's got clean lines, and that increase legibility for screen and good for small sizes. So generally, we want to keep the fonts choices minimal and not using too many fonts. Currently, the heading typeface looks a bit dated, and it does not work well with the rest. The horizontal lines also doesn't quite go quite well with the slanted lines. So I'm going to remove the white color box and change the fonts as to Roboto and use a gray color as the background. So you've got the before and after. So I made the illustration also a bit bigger and added the next button to the right-hand side of the screen. Once the learner finishes reading, they can intuitively select next to move on. Without the white box, it also looks cleaner. So maybe what we can do is maybe we can shorten the heading as well. So currently the heading reads some facts to know about COVID-19. We can probably shorten it to facts about COVID-19. All right. So, and I also look at the slanted lines over here, and I thought maybe we can do something fun with the heading and the slanted lines. So using the same Roboto font, I've changed to the italic version, tilt it slightly so that it matches the line. I scale up the character so that she has got a bigger presence and move her to the right so that she does not distract the next button. I've styled the next button with round edges so that it matches with the rest of the graphic. So you have before and after. Yes, there are many changes done to this mockup, but we have kept most of the assets and stick largely to the original look and feel. And again, using design best practices in e-learning, it improved our learning experience. So again, thank you, Emily, for allowing me to review and make suggestions to your design. I think you've made a really good attempt in achieving the look. So keep up the good work. All right, the next mockup is submitted by Fakar. And he has used the photography approach. It's clean and minimalistic, very simple 2-column layout with text and image. Right, text, image, image, and text. What I like about this is that it's so simple and it can be converted to a template. There are many projects that, there may be projects that require you to churn out a number of courses in a short period of time. And a template is great for that. Content can be replaced quickly and easily. So, and the photograph of the model is well shot. It's kind of shot against a flat color background, or it might be a green screen, which makes replacing background color easy. All right, so I will actually be looking for more diversity in the models. Instead of repeating the same model, we can use different gender, race, age, etc. And there could be more thoughts around the usability as well. Like, for example, how do you get from the first screen to the next? Is there a button to select, or do you scroll down? What happens if you select one of the symptoms? Where does it bring you to? So these are things to consider and what the clients might want to know. The mobile mockup can also be bigger. I can't see the design in this photograph. So it defeats the purpose of having this photograph at all. So I suggest having a close-up shot of mobile device where you can actually see the design clearer. So there are websites these days that allow you to do that, to superimpose graphics on devices. And sometimes when I review a design, I'll go to Getty Images or any stock libraries that you use to find photograph that I have in mind and attach the photograph or a link to the feedback. Or I'll jump to Pinterest to work out a mood board. Pinterest is a great place for inspiration and showing examples of the design you have in mind. And it's an effective way to communicate your designers. Try to analyze what we have been doing, all right? Like try to analyze like what we have been doing with the designs and explain where the positives, the negatives, and what can be improved. So you usually get the message across quicker and save a lot of time. All right, the last mockup I'm going to show you is by Amanda. This submission is actually meant for another brief, which is to create a HR assist knowledge base for fresh supermarket. But I really want to show you this example because I really like it of of how photograph is used effectively in Amanda's work. So Amanda, I like how you put user into the scenario where he's in his workplace using the tool that you've created. So straight up, you're allowing the client to form a visual connection of your solution being implemented in their business, and their employee are actually using the tool. How cool is that? And at the same time, we're also showing a screenshot of the actual interface in the photograph. And the photograph is well shot, it's natural, it's got nice depth of field. The character is clearly focused, beautiful earthly colors. The composition of the photograph is great. The character is positioned 2/3 of the screen, leaving enough space for the other elements. Color of his top matches the logo, which is really cool. If this is a stock photograph, your selection is spot on. You may have edited the colors to match, I don't know, but you've adapted the branding really well. You've even adapted the branding to the staff ID. And you found a photograph of him looking straight at the camera. So what you've done here has clearly shown that you've got great attention to details. There's probably a few things that I would like to improve, but they're just really, really minor. The labels can be closer to the thing that you want to highlight. The consistency with the sentence case over here. Some of them has got the title case, some of them has sentence case, alignment issues of this icon, but that's just nitpicking. All right, but overall, if I'm a decision maker in this, I'll be pretty happy to know that someone has actually put the thought and considered my organization brand, how we use the system, and addressing our needs in this proposal. So fantastic work, Amanda. Really impressive mockup. Next, I want to share some tips about setting positive feedback culture in your team. The fact is it takes practice. So try to integrate reviews in your design process regularly. Giving and receiving feedback provide us with an opportunity to improve both ourselves as well as the quality of the design. So we should have an improvement mindset. Be objective and not personal. Be respectful. Feedback should be given and received in an honest and respectful way. Lastly, critiquing design is a conversation and it's not a command. If there's anything I suggest that doesn't make sense or work, I'm always open for discussion. All right, lastly, I want to revisit some of the tools that we spoke about that help to create better designs. And there's so many out there. And if you Google most of them, you're most likely to find more. All right, I don't personally use all of them, but I've included them here, and hopefully it can help some of us. And if you know any tools that are not listed here, please feel free to share in the chat. I'm not sure if there's a chat that you can share. But yeah, do share, it's good. So on the left, we've got stock libraries and stock images and videos. Firstly, stock images are very useful. Many of us do not have the budget and time to hire photographers or videographers or illustrators to create custom assets. So stock libraries is a good alternative. It's good for creating mood boards, and some of them are free and some of them are paid services. Fonts. We don't need to be limited by the fonts that come with our operating system. A place that we go all the time is Google Font and Adobe Fonts. Font pair is an interesting one. It helps to suggest fonts that go well with one another. It's good for pairing, for finding headings and body text combinations. Inspiration. Musli and Pinterest is my favorite. That is the one that I use all the time. Musli is a plugin, it's a browser plugin, which gives you regular updates on news and design news, graphics, inspiration, development, and UX, etc. All right, next, for accessibility, we've got JAWS screen reader an NVDA screen reader, and then the color contrast tool that we spoke about. WebAIM and Visual Australia has got a lot of other information regarding accessibility, and I think they have got a color contrasting tool as well. Colors. Color Safe is a good one. It helps you to find accessibility colors. And then some of the project management and communication tool that we use as well. So Microsoft Planner and Trello is a good one that we use, that you can actually attach screenshots and you can make comments to your designs, and you can tag them so that they are notified on the changes to make as well. So that is a good one. So thank you for being such an amazing group today. I really hope that the session has been helpful to you. And please, I would like to connect with you. My LinkedIn link is shown below. If there's any questions, I'm happy to take them. Thank you.
Hi, James. Hannah here. So I'll be speaking on behalf of the audience. But first of all, you were absolutely incredible. The chat that's been happening from the audience is just, you've just done such an amazing job. It's so practical in the work that you put into this session. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So yeah, amazing.
Really appreciate it.
Into the questions from the audience. The first question, we have a question from Catherine, and she's wanting to know, is center aligned text harder to read from your perspective?
It depends on the application. I think that center aligned is harder to read because the starting point of each line is different when it's center aligned. So depending on how the content, all right. So, but most of the time, when if you put a content into the paragraph that is center aligned, the starting point of the first word, it's always different. So that makes it harder to read, because once you finish the last word of the first line, you need to actually go and search for the starting point of the next line. So yeah, hopefully I answered the question.
Awesome, thanks, James. We've got another question from Melina. She was talking about icons. So there was two different types. In an example you showed, there was one type in the navigation bar and another type for the icons and the content, so for the people. She was wanting to know, is it better to just use one type of icon?
Is that the Emily Chorley one?
So it was, I think it was the first example, it was light blue in color.
Yep. Sorry, just let me go back maybe. So
I guess the question is it better to have different types of icons or use the same type?
This one? This you mean this thing and this thing? Yeah, I think as a general rule of thumb, it's good to keep graphics consistent. So yeah, I would say, yeah, most of the time I'll keep to the same type. But if this hero image will be different, because his hero image is like, it gives a general, it gives the look and feel of the work. For this one, I would like it to be of the same type. For this one, if this is the case, I would think that this works really well, because the same type of the icons are for all the navigation, and you can use a different type here as well. So that is fine. I think in this case, it can be a different type. But if it's the same navigation, all the icons should be the same type. Does this answer the question?
Great. Yeah, thank you so much, James. We've run out of time for Q&A. Thank you to the audience for your participation. We received such great feedback for your session, James, and we're so grateful. So yeah, thank you so much, and everyone get ready for the next session. It's very exciting.
Thank you all.